And so the first topic that we addressed was natural gas and coal. And Mike Ming, who was the president of REPC and is now the Secretary of Energy for the state of Oklahoma, he talked to us about what's going on in basically the electrical power generation field, and the fact that with current EPA or expected EPA regulations, a lot of the coal power plants will have to be shut down because of the emissions issues. Now, in the state of Texas, most of our coal plants, or a lot of our coal plants, have been built in what would say modern era, so that we're in a little better shape in Texas than in other parts of the country. But regardless of that, I think if we're going to burn natural gas or burn coal, we've got to come up with a better way to do the combustion, to eliminate some of the issues with air emissions. And one of the biggest problems, and I think it's going to raise its head this year, is water issues. There is always a connection between energy and water, and we're getting to the point in some of our power plants in Texas where the cooling lakes have dropped significantly, and if we don't refill those this year, we may have some problems in Texas this summer with the cooling lakes for our emissions. So another thing which we'll see as we go forward is the integration of the natural gas and the coal electricity generating plants integrated with wind and solar. I think it became crystal clear at this meeting, if not at other meetings before, that wind and solar should be in the energy mix, but because sometimes the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, you've got to have electricity, and that's where you have to fire up the gas-fired power plants. You can't cycle coal up and down plants as easily as you can natural gas. And so there's an entire PowerPoint presentations in our online version of this, and we've just pulled out one or two graphics of each of the presentations, and this is one from Mike Ming, and it basically shows that if you look at the cost, the average cost in dollars per kilowatt hour, you've got solar, wind, hydro, coal, and natural gas. And natural gas is actually about as inexpensive, the price right now, as it's been in a long time, because of what we heard yesterday with the amount of shale gas we have. Nuclear power is a little different. We've got two of the largest nuclear plants in Texas and some of the most modern plants in Texas. We have 5% of the electricity on the national scale comes from Texas nuclear power plants, and our meeting happened right after the Japan earthquake and the tsunami, and so there was it was discussed and admitted in the meeting that that's going to even slow down the expansion of nuclear power even more than what it is now. But there's some technologies on the horizon, mainly the development of small reactor technology, and that could end up being we'll have small modular nuclear sites rather than large sites, and that could, in the future, 10, 20 years out, be one solution that has a real possibility of bringing nuclear back into the mix. Those new modular nuclear sites will not have the waste disposal problems that we have with the larger plants. And of course, the factors that are going to affect going forward obviously are going to be around the costs, the public awareness, public policy, and the permitting processes. Scott Tinker, who's been here at our meeting this week, he gave us a very good overall view of renewable energy. Mainly wind and solar are what we've been talking about as the major factors, but there are other renewable energies such as the hydrokinetic energy using the currents in the ocean and that sort of thing. But one of the biggest problems with the wind and solar, as you know, is the intermittency of the energy source and the storage problem. So one of the biggest technical challenge is going to be the how to store the energy and how to bring the cost down, especially of the solar panels. In terms of regulatory challenges, we've got to look at energy security and affordability and the land footprint. Everybody thinks wind energy is a nice option, and it is, except I don't want that wind turbine in my backyard approach. So and most of the wind energy is in the central part of the state, I mean the nation, and the people are not there, so the transmission issues are big. We got into next talking about smart grid and how to move this energy around, and mainly we're still talking about electric energy. So we had the program divided up. The first half of the day, the morning, we were talking mainly about electric energy, static energy, and then the second half of the day we started talking about fuel, motor fuel, mobile energy, how we get around. So here we're still talking about the electric grid, and it was very interesting on the smart grid vision, and Mark Armentrout did a great job on that. And there's a lot of potential here, as you might expect, to monitor the grid, and not only to adjust the use of energy during the time of day or weather, but also to predict what might be going on and make some changes ahead of time, especially in things like wind. If you do a very good job of forecasting when the wind's going to blow and the wind's not going to blow, it gives you a head start and trying to alter the sources of the electricity and know when that's going to change. But what's really got my attention, and I'm not an expert by any means on all of this, I'm just reporting to you what these other experts said at our meeting, was the cybersecurity issues. And I have been to a couple of cybersecurity meetings, and it's kind of like real scary about what's going on right now. I think the ERCOT has and we heard from ERCOT yesterday, they have a group that does nothing but monitor their systems. And they tell me they get millions of attempts every day to break into their systems, and that's just ERCOT. And most of them are trivial, but there's a handful. They have to chase down a person. They have automatic systems that kind of spot funny things going on, and then they have to have a person to kind of look at it and try to determine if it's a real cybersecurity threat or not. The thing about it is, on the internet, okay, on the internet, we're quite aware of all these viruses and problems, and in the power distribution industry, they've been immune to this because they haven't been on the internet. They just have their own closed systems. But once you put in the smart grid, now you're connecting up the power industry to the internet, and that just opens up the door for anybody in the world that wants to try to mess with the electric power systems in the United States. So it's a very, very serious, that's probably one of the top takeaways I had from that meeting, is smart grids are nice, and we're probably going to go that way, but boy, it's going to open up a whole nother set of problems in terms of cyber security. And there's a lot to the smart grid, and it's connecting up the different sources of energy and the different uses of energy and trying to optimize that. So it's a topic that's going to be around for a while, and it's going to become more important, but there are some issues. We next turned our attention to transportation fuels, and we looked at natural gas vehicles, electric vehicles, electric freight, and ethanol. We had a nice discussion on ethanol. Michael Economides, who Christine knows, and I've known Michael for a while, he gave a very good talk on maybe a new way to come up with ethanol from natural gas rather than corn. And we're also, we're looking at biofuels as also part of the fuel, and a big area for that is algae production. And what I've told a lot of audiences when I start talking about this is, why are we making ethanol from corn? It doesn't make a bit of sense, and when you start studying it, it doesn't make any sense at all from an economic point of view. And there are other ways to make ethanol. One, as Michael explained, was natural gas. You can also make it out of algae. And for those of you who maybe didn't take historical geology, the seas in the Cretaceous time were filled with algae. And a lot of the oil and gas reservoirs we produce, a lot of them in Texas, come from the Cretaceous. And at that time, the earth was warmer, the seas were loaded up with algae. And I remind people, the seas were not loaded up with corn, it was loaded up with algae. And so really maybe Mother Nature's telling us we ought to be using algae or other plant products to make and save the corn to eat and to drink, the bourbon. And so we've got a long ways to go in this country, and the U.S. government has mandated we have 10% alcohol or ethanol, and it has to come from corn. And what Michael made the case is, look, we can make ethanol from natural gas, and there's been some recent breakthroughs by Celanese and other companies, and we're going to start seeing some plants being built along the Gulf Coast to try to turn some of this natural gas excess we have into liquid fuels. Marvin Odom talked about that yesterday, about taking natural gas and converting it into liquid fuels, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that going on here in Texas and in the United States. The other thing that's pretty clear is we need to start converting a lot more of our vehicles over to natural gas. And this is a no-brainer. In fact, like in Brazil, there's 1.8 million cars running off of natural gas. And in Bangladesh and India, everywhere in the world, there's a lot of cars running off of natural gas. We've never done that in the United States because we've always had a plentiful supply of cheap energy, gasoline, and you have to have a refueling network to do this. So I don't think your car and my car are going to be running off of natural gas anytime soon, but we can get taxi fleets and bus fleets doing that, which was being done right now in Houston and in other areas. In fact, we've been working with Lynn about trying to see if we could get some of the buses at the Texas A&M campus running off of natural gas, and the bottom line is you have to put in a refueling station. But in addition to providing, natural gas right now, well, gasoline's going to be $4 a gallon soon with the price of oil. It's just, that's what it has to be. But right now, natural gas is more like $1 to $1.25 a gallon if you're running your car off of that. But it also is a cleaner burning fuel. It puts out less emissions, and it has less wear and tear on your engine. So there's all kind of reasons why converting fleets over to natural gas makes sense. In fact, with all the operations going on in South Texas right now, developing the Eagle Ford Shale, and all the diesel engines from rigs and trucks running, and the wind blowing from south to north, San Antonio is starting to get into some air emission problems from all those diesel trucks running. But Chesapeake and other companies are starting to convert their rigs and their trucks over to natural gas, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that go on in the coming years. We hope so. And the biggest problem there is the supply of natural gas is not the problem. The biggest problem is converting the vehicles over to running it, and getting making sure the regulatory policy allows it where you can put in these natural gas refueling stations where they need to be. We did talk about electric vehicles, and it was interesting. One of the gentlemen who came over from Austin, who participated on our panel, he has an electric vehicle, and he asked us if we had a recharging station where he could drive his electric vehicle from Austin to come give us a talk, and we didn't, but we kind of sent out an all-points bulletin to the faculty, and there was a gentleman in the electrical engineering department that had one, but he hadn't installed it yet, so we, within like 24 hours, got it installed out at the Bush Library, and so that we could recharge the electric vehicle, and that turned out to be an interesting process. But electric vehicles, you know, they have a challenge. The batteries are the challenge. I think it's a good idea to go that direction, but there's a long way to go with the battery technology, the cost of the vehicles, the short duration of actually using the electric portion. Most of the vehicles are dual vehicles, so they can run off of gasoline or electric. That's the way it's going to be for a while, I believe. But in the long run, electric vehicles have a lot of potential in closed city areas, big cities where you don't have to travel much, and you really have the emissions problems in the city. Now, some people call electric vehicles coal-fired vehicles. They run off of coal because most of the electricity is made from coal, so you use that electricity. I don't go there, but I've heard that before. One of the most interesting ways we ended up here is talking about the electrified freight transportation. And the TTI, which is a state agency, the Texas Transportation Institute, they've been working on building, on actually designing a way to get the freight off the highways. I think this has a lot of merit, and you're going to see some pilot projects on this where they're going to build elevated rail and try to get a lot of the 18-wheelers off the highways and from Dallas to Houston or the ship channel to Dallas, ship a lot of the freight on rail and then pick it up on the other end. And they can use the existing highway right-of-ways, so they don't have to worry about right-of-ways. And they're going to use elevated guideways. And I think most of you probably know that a 18-wheeler does like 25,000 times more damage to the roads than a car. So, and most of you know that our traffic congestion in Texas is pretty bad, and that we have a lot of accidents, fatal accidents every day in Texas. And a lot of that's just because of the traffic congestion and everybody going 70 miles an hour with 18-wheelers and cars all mixed together. So if we could get a lot of those trucks off the roads, it would make the roads safer, it would make the roads last longer, and it would just, there's just all kind of benefits to that, and it would be cheaper, actually. So there's some really nice pictures of the elevated guideways here in your book. I suggest you take a look at those, and there's even more in our full report. So just to summarize this, I went through it real quickly, and there was a whole lot more than of course, as you would expect, than what I could go through. You can download the full report from our website, but we address the issues of the rapid growth in Texas. We've seen some of those numbers, and we also have addressed in this conference the fact that we have a lot of natural gas, and right now it's cheap. And some people argue, well, the price of natural gas goes up, it goes down, it goes up, and that's true. But I think with the current state of shale gas development, we're not going to see the spikes as magnified as they've been. I think you're going to see natural gas between $3, $4, $5, $6 an MCF, which is much cheaper than oil. The ratio ought to be about 10 to 1. So if oil's at $100 a barrel, gas should be $10 an MCF on a BTU equivalent. Actually, it's more than that. But gas right now is about $3 an MCF because of the oversupply. So I don't see that changing a lot. So with the rapid increase in the population, the rapid increase of natural gas supply, we're going to need a whole lot more electrical energy in Texas in the coming years than we have right now. We've got to address technology issues. Again, the technology issues, we're looking at electricity and natural gas, and we have to have the proper regulatory agencies to play a role. I didn't address that to you this morning, but we had a lot of discussion on what should be done in Austin and Washington to help us develop or allow us to develop these technologies, these energy sources properly while protecting the environment and the state. So that's basically a quick summary of our Energy Summit. It was a great day. I think everybody came, enjoyed it, and I think we have it very well documented. The TAMEST staff has done a terrific job of putting the reports together, and I encourage you to go to tamest.org and view the entire report. Thank you. Yes.
Steve, that was a great summary, and thank you. And the report is also super. I would just want to ask you quickly about your very last set of comments about the cooperation and the need for appropriate regulations. Texas has been an anti-regulation state, if I want to say it politely. And I'm just wondering, what do you think the chances are for that kind of a cooperative management and regulatory approach to develop?
Well, in this Department of Energy subcommittee that Mark Zoback and I served on, we made it quite clear that there has to be regulation. You can't just let everybody go drill a well anywhere they want to, or let somebody put in a natural gas refueling station anywhere they want to. So we have to have rules and regulations on how to construct the natural gas refueling stations, how to construct a well. But what we came out very strongly in our report is this ought to be done at the local level, the state level, not the federal level. That the EPA would like to run all of it, and the EPA is in charge of what's going on a lot of times in the federal lands and in some states. But I think the head knocking you've seen is between the state of Texas and the federal government on issues where the state thinks they can regulate it better than the feds. So I think most of us agree that we do need regulations, and they need to be fair and well thought out, but they ought to be done on the local level rather than the federal level when appropriate. Yes?
Hey, Steve, one issue that I didn't see addressed that has intrigued me for some time is the integration of new technology into the design of homes, and especially I've seen several papers on solar cell technology that is integrated into roof shingles, for example, also energy storage and, just those kinds of issues integrated into the home of the future. Is that an area that you think has a lot of potential?
Yes, and we decided to keep this Energy Summit to a single day, and we just couldn't incorporate everything. I think we did have some information in there when we talked about the smart grids, and we had some information in there when we talked about wind and solar, about how that could be applied on a local level. But for sure, that's something that we need to be working on here in Texas and the U.S. Yes, sir.
Steve, there's been an awful lot of discussion over the last several months on this Canadian pipeline to the Southwest. Any thoughts on how important that is to the energy position of the Southwest with regard to the commercialization and also the needs of the country?
Yeah, this Keystone Pipeline is set to bring, I don't have the number memorized, but it's 1 million, barrels a day or something like that from maybe 2 million from Canada. And basically it's the kind of crude that we could refine in our Gulf Coast refineries. And so we could either build that pipeline and bring the crude down from Canada and refine it here and use it, or we can buy it from the Middle East or South America. We have to have that crude right now. So I think most people that I know in the business would rather have stronger ties with Canada than having to import oil from somewhere else. I think the environmental issues always have to be looked at, and that's kind of what the issue is now. There's some big aquifers in the middle part of the U.S., and for some reason they're worried about contaminating an entire aquifer with one leak from a pipeline, and they've just got to work through those issues. But I think from an economic and an energy security point of view, the pipeline makes sense. I mean, one more quote, and I'll get out of here. That since we started on this planet using oil in the 1800s, we've produced and used about 1.1 trillion barrels of oil. 1.1 trillion barrels of oil. In the oil sands in Canada, they have in place 1.7 trillion barrels. So they've got more oil in place up there than we've used in the last 130 years. Now, we've got to learn how to do it properly. We've got to do it and take care of the environment. But it's a huge resource that can supply oil to the United States for a long, long time. All right, we need to move on. Thank you.